Well, speaking of doing better, we have some really big wins, and we talked a lot about some of those wins last week on our Monday meal. So, if folks want to check that out, like Sabir Lockett and Jose Bernal from Ella Baker Center and Sabir from eBase came on to talk about the results in general. Big win for Pam Price as PA for Alameda County. She won by like 27,000 votes. And so that was, to me, a very resounding FU to the current system and to Nancy O'Malley and her situation. And we had a nail biter of a win with Sheng Thao came in as our new mayor elect, who will start in January. She won through our ranked choice voting system, won by 682 votes, I think it is, or
Something
80.
like that.
I remember one of those numbers. But yeah, and the next day, Lauren Taylor came out and said, I'm going to concede, but this ranked choice voting situation is not democratic, which is a crock of bullshit. So, just wondering.
Well, it was democratic when it worked for him.
Right.
It was democratic when he was employing it as a strategy.
Exactly.
It only became non-democratic when he lost. And the other thing that I think is really important for people to know is that he still would not have won just off of first place votes. It would have been a runoff because he did not get over 50%. That is also a false narrative. He did not win the election with the first round of first place votes. That did not happen.
Did not. And I think that, to frame it in that way, it really reminds me of the narrative of the right, which is, I didn't win, so it's the system's fault. It's rigged. It's not working. And so, yeah.
Well, and we see that. We see that not just coming out of the mouths of the electeds who lost, but we see that narrative coming out of right-wing forces in Oakland. Specifically, I'm talking about, I think it's the Coalition for a Better Oakland, which, as far as I'm concerned, is a white supremacist group run by Steve Heimhoff. And they are very upset, and they're putting out some really nasty misinformation and disinformation. And I will not be surprised if there are recall efforts that all of us are having to deal with very soon, because even though recall, and if you study the history, and actually Mitch Jeserich at KPFA has a really great oral history on recalls, but they weren't birthed because you don't like the outcome of the election. That's actually not what they're for.
Right.
They're for, excuse me, y'all. They're for if an elected isn't doing their job. Right.
Right.
But what we've seen, nationally and locally is the right really using it as a way to unseat democratically elected leaders. And I imagine they'll try that nonsense here. But they also tried to elect a whole bunch of right-wing extremist reactionary people, and they lost.
Yes, let's be very clear. And I just want to really put a shout out to Alyssa Victory, because her campaign is the reason why I think Sheng Thao was able to win this, because through the ranked choice not strategy, but just the ranked choice voting, she really put the voters who voted for Alyssa put Sheng as their number 2.
Yeah, I've got a little bit more of an expanded analysis of that, actually. A lot Sheng's win came primarily from the folks that were like me, which are traditionally liberals, last minute Lucy's, who put our ballots in the mail the day of or the day before, and those were the remaining ballots. And while yes, a lot of Alyssa's number 2s did go to Sheng, there was also a push from some progressives there at the end, including myself, that said, right? That said that we were fighting for the soul of Oakland. This was life or death. And I don't want to discount the power of the people,
For sure.
and the role of the progressive movement, and those of us that put our asses on the line, actually, because while I very much look forward to working with Mayor-elect Thao, I'm definitely glad that she is who won. Right, that it's not like there's 100% agreement across the board. And Sheng and I talked about this a lot, right? That for me to come out and tell that a lot of progressives sat down around the policing issue and they didn't know who to vote for. And some folks weren't going to vote at all. And so it really did take for progressives to stand up and say, listen, there is no such thing as a perfect candidate. Sheng is our best shot at saving Oakland's soul, and you've got to vote. You have to. You don't get to sit this one out. And I think that is what pushed Sheng over the top. Or one of the things.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely think that there were just, like we made a big push. There was a group of kind of older progressive, activists and organizers, including Walter Riley, who really made some big pushes.
Exactly.
And I'll be very clear, Oakland Rising Action, not Oakland Rising. But those forces, I definitely agree with that. Like, I'm not, but I also see that Alyssa ran a campaign with very little money and funding and backing, and almost took the third place against Ignacio de la Fuente, who had a ton of money behind him, and so I think. I don't think she single-handedly handed it to Sheng. Of course, no one can do that, but I think some of those strategies were really clear. And I'm really interested to see when the data comes out. Like how and who voted where, and what precincts and what neighborhoods and districts in Oakland really did come out in force. The way I think is one of the things too is we can't think about elections as just election day anymore. It's it's almost a month it's 3 weeks of election, get out the vote, prior to the last day of voting. And so there's so much counting that needs to get done. And then there's also just who's coming out to vote in those last 3 weeks, in the last couple days make a huge difference.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I ran, it's time ballots hit mailboxes. I mean, there's everything up into that, but that's what, 6 weeks, 7 weeks before election day. So, and people do start voting then, particularly older voters. There's also the timing around, for instance, when the Democratic Party releases their endorsements, because that still has an undue, in my opinion, amount of sway over, who people vote for, because they're like, oh, I'm a Democrat, check this box. I think that, we can attribute some of Libby's ongoing reign of terror to her being supported by the Democratic Party, for sure. They get the blame for the outcome of her mayoral tenure. Yep, I said it.
Everyone hold that piece right there for a second. Well, so what do you think? So now that Sheng is, Sheng Thao will be our next mayor. Where do you think, what does that mean for us? What does that mean for Oakland?
I mean, I think it means a few things, but there's something that I do want to point out. I mean, even though we had, people are calling a progressive sweep, though, I think that to what extent some of the new council members will actually be progressive is to be seen, because they don't have a track record.
That's right.
And yeah, I'll leave that there for now.
Let's put a pin in that. Let's come back to that.
Yeah, we should. That one. Yeah, we should. Yeah. I mean, you know me. I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to look in your face and say that I said it. So, that said, I mean, I think that one of the things that I don't hear as many people talking about in terms of how close this mayoral election is that even though we had this progressive sweep, you know, with the measures and you know, Councilmember Bass, excuse me, held on to her seat. And what I took from it is how fractured and divided we really are.
Really?
Yeah. But from the mayoral, absolutely. That there were that many people that thought a continuation of the Libby Schaff agenda is what's good for us. When the evidence of her reign is all over our city, is unnerving, and I think we would be remiss to overlook the fact that there are a bunch of, I call them new booty white people. That
What do you
have
call them?
new
New
booty white
booty?
people, new booty white people that have moved into Oakland,
I
that
love that.
definitely feel like they have paid for the right to be here, that they've paid a lot of money to be here, and that they should be able to dictate the politics of this city. We would be remiss to not look at the growing pockets of white supremacist organizations inside of the city of Oakland. We would be remiss to not, I mean, I won't say, I just call him SS. And yeah, it's a play on words. I won't say his name, but he has a following, right? That's concerning. The types of violence and violent rhetoric against the unhoused, against Black folks, against women of color that sit on city council, that are part of the mainstream dialogue, the types of violence that is all over next door, and these aren't like Trumpers. These are folks that you go to work with every day with y'all. These are the folks in your grocery stores. These are the folks at the gas station. Oakland is definitely divided. I don't. This is not. It was not a slam dunk in terms of the mayoral.
No,
And
not in terms of mayoral, which is it to me, which is like an interesting point because on the one hand, folks voted very strongly. These aren't like small wins, right? For housing, for just cause, eviction amendments, for more fair elections in Oakland, for a progressive business tax to hold corporations more accountable. That and then to the extent that folks voted for what was considered to all
the
intents
leadership,
and
though, of the
purposes.
city, that is
Yeah,
the leadership of the city, and that's
I
where folks
agree.
broke right. That
Which I think is that I feel like there's like something there, like that maybe some identity politics played into things that
I think you
like
just have to listen to the comments at city council, Liz. And I'm not talking about just white people. I'm talking about Black folks.
no,
Listen to the
I want
comments at
that's
city
what I
council. But
feel.
that's my point. We're divided.
Yeah.
We are a
Mhm.
divided city. Um, and I think but that's also, I think, what's exciting about Sheng being in the seat is I think that she has relationships across the board that are going to make mending for the folks that can listen to reason and rationale, right? That aren't living in Trump's version of reality,
Mhm.
that she'll be able to mend some fences. But that it definitely has to happen. And Oakland is going to have to make a stand against hate collectively and loudly. Because some folks just don't get to be here as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
Racists don't get to be here. People who believe in violence against the unhoused, people that are anti-Black, anti-BIPOC, anti-woman, those folks are here and they're loud and they're making political inroads. And as an organizer, I don't have the luxury of ignoring that that's happening.
Word, yes to all of that. And I also wonder just like um I wonder, what I wonder what conversations we need to be having and what kind of like accountability um, needs to happen, right? Like what, sorry, my brain went in 5 different directions and stalled on me. I wonder just, I wonder what that role would look like for the mayor. Let's start with that question.
Oh, well, I think it's well, first of all, we're right? So, and what I mean by that is, investing in prevention is going to reduce crime in the city of Oakland.
That's true.
Protecting housing for our most vulnerable and marginalized are going to
That's
make
right.
Oakland streets safer.
That's right.
Mayor-elect Thao has talked about the hiring blitz. Staffing our city departments is going to mean the trash gets picked up, right? So all of the things that progressives have been pushing for, so long as Sheng sticks to the progressive program, then we're going to see the results. And then some people are just going to have to shut up. And it's funny, there's a guy named T. Wolf. I don't know what his first name is, but he's on Twitter, and he's a right-wing guy in San Francisco. And he and I have $100 bet that in 1 year, because I think the day after the elections, we're basically final. I think we were still sort of like maybe with Sheng, but we were pretty clear that the votes that were left to be counted weren't going to, change the outcome. Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know if it was directly at me or I don't know, somehow these right-wing trolls, like, they infiltrate my Twitter feed for some reason. But I saw it and he was like, well, at least we're cleaning up San Francisco. I feel sorry for you, Oakland. And I don't always engage the trolls, y'all, because it's not good for your mental health. So I certainly don't recommend it. But sometimes I just it's the Scorpio in me. Sometimes I just can't help it. And I think I wrote, no, I don't think I know. I wrote back, I said, I bet you $100 you're going to eat those words in a year. And he wrote back, bet. And so I put it on my calendar for a year from now, because if I had a crystal ball in front of me, I'm pretty sure what it would show is San Francisco continuing to go down the tubes because they are going to try to police and incarcerate their way out of trauma and substance abuse and poverty. That doesn't work. We've tried it. It's called the war on drugs. It failed. And with our progressive city council and a very progressive leaning mayor elect and the organizing that will continue to happen, we should be investing in all of the correct things to turn the tide in Oakland and be able, once again, for Oakland to be the vanguard of how you create equitable, safe, just, whole, and thriving communities. That was a long-winded way of answering your question, but I think I did.
Yeah, I wonder, because I think one of the biggest things is that she's going to have to make some type of changes in the administration, like how the administration run, who's doing it. Like, I think the city administrator's got to go. Ed Ruskin's got to go.
I can't wait. I'm going to whoop-de. I'll probably be skipping all over Oakland his last day in office.
I know. Can we do that together?
I think we should all just skip down Broadway.
We need a drum line from west to east to do that one, because I think that is a major one.
I mean, there's turnover with every administration, and I can't imagine there will be very, at least people that were closely working with Libby, like the city administrator, chief, like all of those people have to turn over. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see who she surrounds herself with. But also some of that is on us, right? Like to the point that we were making earlier, right? Like Mayor-elect Thao did not get into that seat by herself. There's a lot of us organizationally, our bases, folks that were part of that. And it's not her administration, y'all. It's our administration.
That's right.
Right. And I think we can look to the way that Councilmember Fife governs, right, as an expectation for how Mayor-elect Thao should govern. And then it's up to all of us to remain engaged and to hold her accountable and to continue to push her. We don't get to go and be like, oh, well, the measures passed. City council's progressive. We've got a progressive leaning mayor. I'm going to sleep for 4 years. That's not how this works.
Please, nobody do that, because.
But people do that every election, every single time.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the biggest pieces is like folks got to still continue to stay engaged in it. I think, like tapping into organizations. I was talking with Davey D on, Hard Knock Radio the other day, and he was asking me, well, what can people do? And I said, tap in, because these are the organizations that are doing that day in, day out, inside, outside, like organizing, in different alliances, in different formations, and really and really pressing on folks and providing opportunity for people to do that pressing, right? Because it's not just, oh, just on your own, like definitely, you know, calling in to city council meetings or calling into the mayor's office or, you know, putting that pressure, but it's also like being part of a movement of people who are doing that work together, right?
Well, it's also not just relying on electoral politics. So I want to be real clear. APTP, we engage, but we're really, electoral politics is not going to get us free. Electoral politics is not going to build the communities, the neighborhoods, the city, the world that we want. Never, ever. Electoral politics in this country.
Drop that one.
That's
it.
That, I mean, it is white supremacy in action. It will always be white supremacy in action, no matter who is sitting in that seat.
Yeah.
And so, you know, what we talk about is all roads in. So we have to both be engaging inside of the electoral politics paradigm because we have to, because that's where the money is. And
because a big part of
hold on, let me just finish my sentence, Liz. We have to be engaging in electoral politics paradigm because those people have power over the material conditions in our lives. At the same time, though, we need to be building our own solutions, right? We need to be building our own community response programs, our own schools, our own housing, our own pods, our own community response, community crisis. All of those things have to be happening at the same time. So I want to be really clear. That's actually the most important thing, is to not think that we're ever going to get free at the ballot box.
Yeah, and when we're able to like have this system be either eradicated or completely changed, we have to be ready with what we wanted to build, right? And we're not going to like build from scratch in that moment. We need to be building it now and being prepared for that now.
That's what we do.
Yep.
It's our whole theory of change.
And big props to APTP for that, and like and leading a lot of that work. You know, Oakland Rising, we obviously, our organization is about building electoral power, building political power, but it really is about like engage with voters or engage with as many people as you can in an electoral, you know, within the electoral system that you can in terms of base building, right? And so for us, it isn't the ballot measure that is the end game. It's about when we're at the doors and we're talking to people, how are we inviting them to join the work that we're doing on the ground and our partner organizations, and what are they doing, right? How are we using our power collectively to push up on this system and make those big changes? But also, like, how do you tap in with housing justice? How do you tap in with, you know, with environmental justice? How do you tap in with building power for immigrant Chinese workers in, you know, in Chinatown? And how do you do that against a district attorney's system that continues to incarcerate people, or against the sheriff, right? I think
that's going to be another big piece for Sheng too, because that's another place we're divided along racial lines. The seeds of division that have been sown by the Libby Schaaf administration and conservatives inside of our community between our Black and Asian relatives has been particularly devastating. As someone that comes out of multiracial organizing as a political principle and tenet.
Yeah, I feel like it's just like there's also the part where you know, how do we continue to build our like third world solidarity and not let that to be divided? And Libby was so good at like propping all these people of color around her to safeguard herself, and then to also like be the ones who are pushing her messaging.
Yeah, and also people have to be afraid, have to not be afraid to speak up. I mean, I know that some of the APTP team is on the line, and when that tragedy, when the dentist was murdered, and the barrage of anti-Blackness that was all over the socials, and nobody would say anything, everybody just let it ride. That was an aha moment, I think, for a lot of us. We can't be afraid to speak up, even when what we're going to say isn't popular. And as we know, it wasn't. You know, it turned out to be a whole different type of tragedy. in terms
Totally.
of that loss of life. And still nobody said anything. Nobody went, oh, maybe we should go back and try to fix some of that. But I think not just the mayor, but I think city council too. I talked to Councilmember Bass about it on my radio show, because her district has a large Black demographic and also a large Asian demographic, and talking to her about like building unity and beating back the seeds of division that people were actively trying to sow. Because at the end of the day, white supremacy is kicking all of our asses. So
that's right. Like, I think that's one of the biggest things is like Councilmember Bass's district is actually the most diverse district in the city.
Yep.
It, like, San Antonio neighborhood is so diverse. If you look at like just voting population, and this is not including like folks who don't have the ability to vote, right, or have access to voting, that it's actually like Black, brown, white, Asian, like all
rich,
of it.
poor, old,
Rich,
young,
poor,
everybody.
yeah, it is all in District 2 in ways that I don't think any other district kind of that reflection is happening. Although, like, through the redistricting process, we were seeing some really big changes with displacement in District 5, 6, and 7. And, there's been some big changes with the redistricting to District 4, which I think, when we were talking earlier about like progressive, quote unquote, progressive sweep on city council, I think there's a lot of work to be done with Jananine Ramachandran on who's going to be in city council. And I think, we've said that one of the biggest pieces of work that any progressive who joins council from District 4 is really how do you bring folks who are in the middle more to the left. And that does not mean you flip-flop on your messaging and your principles and your stances and your platform because of fear of losing a seat or a race. And how do you talk to your neighbors? How do you talk to your constituents about the issues that really matter? And so I think we have a lot to desire in terms of Jananine stepping into that role and hoping that she'll really get called in to do that work.
We really focused on analyzing people's public safety platforms. That's, from the APT perspective. I mean, ICAP works separately as an individual, right? Went on to give more direct support to Mayor-elect Thao. What was in Janini's public safety platform is concerning.
That's right.
Period. Some of the endorsements that were taken from people that we would consider enemies of the people were concerning. Now, the same grace that I give Mayor-elect Thao and other electeds that I choose to support, right, I can give to Janini, right? Like, it's part of why I'll never run for office again. I mean, folks that remember, like, I didn't mince my fuck right. When I ran for mayor, I ran on my principles and my values. I said defund every chance. I mean, like, I didn't do that. And there were folks that suggested that I should, and it's not. I'm not built like that.
I don't think you could do it. I don't think I could ever see you do that, Kat.
I can't. I mean, I can't. It's just not who I am. I can't. Right. I mean, and I think the only other person sort of in electoral politics that it also, rocks that way 100% is Councilmember Fife. So, but that said, I'm not irrational or unreasonable, and I do understand the way the game goes. So it is my sincere hope that things were said, written, done during campaign time because of an analysis that was made of the district that folks are running inside of that will not hold true. Once office is taken, and people can feel whatever, the game is what the game is, right? And not everybody's meant to play that game, and it's part of why people hate electoral politics, right? Because it is a game. But tiny politricks, tiny from homefulness, but yeah, they did this stuff, and we're like, well, okay, and that's what I meant by saying I don't know that it is the progressive sweep that we're claiming just yet, and I don't think we will know until, you're right, some of the newer council folks get their feet under them. I know there's a lot of excitement and hope around Kevin in D6.
Yeah, I'm really
I'm
hopeful
also
for him
excited
as
and
well.
hopeful around him, but some of us have to see. And then, and just a reminder, like, there's a difference between a progressive and a liberal, right? Liberals are left leaning, but they are
Everybody
not
put a
progressive.
pin in that one too, like just like that. Let's because I feel like that's also one of the things that happened in this election too, is like everybody claiming to be progressive, and it's like
Happens every election cycle in Oakland.
far, far from it.
Listen, I don't know if Danielle's still here from APTP too. Like, he done said we have to retire the word progressive because it's
I'm
just been
saying,
co-opted to the point, right, where it means liberal, basically, and it no longer means progressive. I don't know what we're gonna call ourselves, but I'm fine with them calling me a radical extremist. It actually doesn't bother me. If extreme means that everybody should be housed, clothed, and fed
yeah,
and employed at a living wage with health care, right on. I'm an extremist.
yeah.
I'll
I'm
take it.
like, I don't need the label, but I'm just like, whatever you want to call it. That these are the things we're fighting for. So let's get on board with that instead of like getting on board with the label for sure.
Yeah. I think
Um,
because the right has so crafted perfectly. I mean, I think I always, if we have a comms background, and so I look at communication strategies a lot. Um, and people are always looking at me like sideways because I always give Johanna Watson at OPD. She's their comms director. She's really good at her job. Like, if you look at like how well spoken Armstrong is, like how
mhm.
smoothly the lies fall out
Yes.
of his mouth, like that's all
Yeah.
Johanna Watson. And the way she trains him. Same thing with the right. Like, they from a comms perspective, right? They have really developed this masterful strategy of co-opting all of our terms and our phrases, and we on the left have not figured out how to beat that back in any significant or sufficient manner yet.
Yeah, and the fine tuning of that, I think, for people who are engaging in this is the difference being is that they're peddling fear. They're using the language, but most of what they're talking about is based in this fearful place of like, you know, and what we're talking about is like about hope. We're talking about a different way of actually living, a different way where we're not fighting for fucking scraps, that we take care of everybody, top to bottom. And I think that's one of the big telltale signs, but it's also one of the things that I noticed I got kind of swung at on Twitter the other day too, which I barely engaged in, but I was kind of like, his platform was flat. Like Lauren Taylor's platform was vague at best. Like he came out and said like very specific things about, well, he not unspecific things about all of them. Yeah, we should have more housing, but no real plan for what that meant.
Well, it's
No
not like
real,
he was going to come out and say, I'm going to continue the Brown Shaft legacy. Stay tuned.
exactly. He's not exactly, and
That's
so
what he was going to do.
he couldn't do either way, right? And it's like, yeah, I mean, if you want to get on board with somebody who really doesn't have any clear plans, like, or
But
um,
see, he did have clear plans. He just couldn't say them out loud.
that's that. Thank you for correcting me on that. That is 100, 100, 100. Yeah,
He was
he
super clear.
has a
And
plan.
that left the drum beating up to us, right?
Right.
For folks like CRC or the C4 groups or the grassroots organizations, right? To talk about Lauren is Libby, Libby is like, we had to beat that drum. We had to make the connection between her funders and his funders, and make sure that folks knew that he was the one that was proposing market rate and high end retail and condominiums on Mills College and at Eastmont Mall, and he was the one that had took the 900. Like we had to do that.
That's right.
Mainstream media certainly wasn't going to do it, and he wasn't copying to any of it, right?
No.
And ultimately, that's what cost him, is that we were able to beat that drum loudly.
Yeah, and it was interesting to like even see when he finally put out his endorsements for the ballot measures. I was like, wow, he went against fair elections in Oakland. which to me is incredulous. Like, oh, to me, that means, oh, what you actually want is to continue this system of big money coming into Oakland and influencing our elections so that you can take that. You can take the big money, that you can continue to just get most of your funding from the hills, that you can get most of your campaign donations from, or even, watching, pretending to turn a blind eye to, independent expenditures that are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for you to get elected. Like, I thought that was ridiculous. I was like, really? Come on, dude. I was like, come on.
I wasn't surprised.
No, I was not either, but I was also just like, that it felt like a stupid move, either way. But, at least showing some of his true colors. I'm still waiting on him to give us an audit on that $8 million that went to ESO Ventures, the pass-through through Oakland to fund, business development, small business development, and we haven't seen it in Oakland.
Well, I mean, he only has a month in office left, so I don't know that we're going to get that.
I don't think so either.
That information. I think that's just, another gift that Libby gave to folks that rock with her agenda.
That's right. Well, I think we're going to still continue to, be in the streets together on city council, and really still trying to push up, even with Sheng, Thao elect, to make sure that many of the campaign promises that she made is that she upholds to them.
Well, not just her campaign promises, but our demands, right? And so for instance, we said 50% of OPD's budget. We meant 50% of OPD's budget, and we're going to get 50% of OPD's budget, whether the mayor, I don't give a fuck who does, like it, don't like it. It's the only way that we're going to get the money that we need to have an equitable society. That's where the money is. That's the only pathway to it. And that's that. And that's nowhere in any of Mayor-elect Thao's promises. That's irrelevant. It's not there. I remember I had this back and forth with Annette McElhaney when Carol was running against her. And McElhaney said, it's on Facebook somewhere. I'm sure people could find it. They wanted to, but said something about, and you're trying to take my seat. It's not your seat. It does not belong to you. That is why we're running someone against you, because you think that seat belongs to you. That seat belongs to the people. You work for us. So it is actually not about them maintaining their promises. It's about us building and maintaining and mobilizing the power so they do what it is that we have collectively, democratically, majority rulesy decided we want them to do. They are not the boss of us.
That's right.
You're the boss of them.
Word. I also, I think that there is also I 100, and I think the places in which she did make any kind of promises, we need to be pushing on her for those.
For sure.
And then pushing on the places that, just like you said earlier, and is that she's not perfect. She's not the perfect progressive candidate. And what are those places? I think you are 100 on that. Appreciate it.
And I do want to say, though, that what the other thing about, what the other thing I believe will be true about, and has been true while she was a council member, is that the door will be open for those conversations and that pushing.
That's right.
Right, as opposed to a Libby administration or a Lauren administration, right, where the door was open if they liked what you were going to say. And so I think, movement is struggle. Right? There's no, we struggle. There's you and I struggle. We struggle inside my organization. We struggle with other ally organizations, right? But how you struggle, and is there room to do so principally, and toward an end goal of building a better struggle for liberation, I think is the question and the important answer. And I do believe that exists with Mayor-elect Thao.
Yeah. And I believe in the work that our people do every day, day in and day out. And so appreciate that. I appreciate the conversation, Kat. I always love having to get to share space with you. I hope we could do it in person soon.
I know, I know. So this will be my last words, and I'll get off, y'all. There is a triple demic happening right now. It is not just the coronavirus, which is back in full force because all you went and had turkey with folks with no mask on. There is also this RSV lung infection, and there is this flu. And
Yeah.
I haven't had the flu since I was in junior high. And I did, you know, I believe in transparency and accountability and critique, self-critique. So I had to tell the truth about myself that I had laxed a little bit. Because it's so, you're out and about and nobody's wearing, right? And I found myself hopping in and out of it. Well, I'm just going to be in there for a minute. Oh, I'm just going to be in there for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't as religious as I had been about it. And when I tell you that I was praying for death, that it was that bad, destinations, I lost time. I probably should have gone to the hospital. It is a nasty, nasty, nasty flu. You do not want it. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other, mask up, sanitize, socially distance. Do not meet in person unless you have to. And if you are going to do it outside. These new strains you float on the air outside even. Just take care of yourselves. And remember that just because you're going to be all right doesn't mean that the disabled or elderly or immunocompromised person standing next to you will be all right.
Yeah, I'm still dealing with, you saw earlier when I kind of went to a moment like I couldn't function. That's part of my long COVID is cognitive functioning is gone. I have impairments with it. So don't know if it's like permanent disability at this point, but we'll have to wait and see. So yes, stay healthy, you all. Follow APTP on all the socials. Follow Kat Brooks. Follow Oakland Rising. You can go to oaklandrising.org.
Tune in to Law and Disorder Monday through Thursday at 8 a.m. on KPFA. Please, we talk about all the things with all the folks.
Yep. Yay! So appreciate you. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank you,
wonderful
Liz.